Welcome, everyone, to the deep dive. You know that feeling, don't you? It's that sort of constant pressure from society, yeah.
Hmm.
Always nudging you to chase what David Brooks calls resume virtues.
Hmm.
The accomplishments, the awards, the stuff that looks great on paper.
Right. The job title, the money, the external markers of success, the things you list.
Exactly. But then
Yeah.
there's usually this other feeling too, right? Quieter, maybe, but it's there. Something suggesting there's more to it. Something, deeper, more lasting.
Hmm. The things people actually remember about you.
Precisely. So today, we're really diving into that big question. How do we actually cultivate those eulogy virtues? The integrity, the character, the love, the things people talk about at your funeral in a world that seems completely obsessed with the shiny resume stuff.
And we're using David Brooks's book, The Road to Character, as a sort of guidepost for this, exploring how different people, historically and maybe even now, built that really deep inner character.
Yeah, and the interesting thing the pattern Brooks points out is that they didn't do it by focusing just on themselves, not by chasing fame or trying to impress everyone.
Right. It was often about committing to something bigger, a purpose, maybe a community, sometimes a faith, something beyond just their own needs and wants.
So to dig into this, we've pulled together a real mix of sources. Spiritual texts, philosophical ideas, personal stories, a rich stack.
Yeah, a lot to unpack.
Our goal here is really to sift through all this amazing material, pull out the key insights, the nuggets of wisdom, and maybe give you a shortcut to understanding this and hopefully, something that resonates personally, something useful for your own path.
Okay, let's get into it.
Okay, so first things first, our sense of self. We generally think we know who I am, right? Like we're this solid, distinct person driving the ship.
Yeah, that's the default setting usually.
But a lot of these sources we look at suggest that this feeling of I might be tangled up with, well, something else, something that can kind of lead us off track if we're not careful.
It's really fascinating how consistently different traditions zero in on this, often calling it the ego. Eckhart Tolle, for example, he describes it as an identification with form.
Form,
Yeah,
like physical stuff, possessions.
that's part of it, yeah, but he means it more broadly. It's also identification with our thoughts, that constant stream of thinking, and the emotional patterns that go with them, our reactions.
Oh, okay, the internal chatter.
Exactly. Tolle says when every single thought just grabs all our attention, when we become completely identified with that voice in the head and the feelings it brings, we actually lose touch with our deeper self, our being.
So we get lost in the mental noise.
Right. He calls it becoming totally identified with form and therefore in the grip of ego. And he thinks this is the core mistake, this forgetfulness of being. It makes reality feel like he says a nightmare sometimes, because we feel separate and constantly under pressure.
That's a powerful idea. So it's not just about wanting things. It's about being totally fused with our thoughts and emotions, like our thoughts, which makes you wonder, if that voice isn't really us, the core us, what happens when we notice the gaps, the silence between thoughts? And critically, how do you even start to untangle yourself from that identification? How do you break free?
Well, connecting to that, Sam Harris talks about something similar, maybe from a more secular angle. He calls it the knot of self.
The knot of self.
And he says it's tied by that very same thing, identification with these thoughts. He points out that we usually fail to just notice thoughts appearing in consciousness. We think they are us.
Right. We take them personally. My thought.
Yeah. And Harris says that feeling, that ownership, is what creates the sense of I. He actually challenges you to pay attention to your consciousness between thoughts in those quiet moments.
What happens then?
He says you discover that consciousness itself in that gap does not feel like a self. It's just awareness, open, quiet, which suggests there's something more fundamental underneath all the mental activity the ego generates.
So the relentless inner monologue, the narrator, it's the ego's performance, not the real you. And we're kind of the captive audience.
That's a good way to put it. And Lao Tzu, coming from the Taoist tradition, takes it even further. He talks about self-indulgence, being self-serving, always promoting yourself, thinking you're always right.
The resume virtue mindset, basically.
Pretty much. He calls that stuff rotting food and painful growths on the body. Really strong language.
Wow. Rotting food?
Yeah. He says these are things all creatures despise, and they must be uprooted, thrown out, and left behind if you want to follow the Tao the way. So it's not just unhelpful, it's actively harmful. Like a sickness in your system.
So this directly contradicts the whole Look out for number 1, self-aggrandizing approach that often gets rewarded, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Hashtag tag 1.2 that traps external validation and materialism.
Absolutely. And this deep-seated self-centeredness, this ego grip, it naturally shows up in how we crave validation from outside, always looking for approval.
Likes, promotions, compliments.
Right. Ralph Waldo Emerson really captured this brilliantly. He talked about our impatience to show some petty talent as a substitute for worth. Like, we're trying to show off minor skills because we lack a deeper sense of value.
A substitute for worth. Ouch.
Yeah. He suggests we're kind of haunted by a conscience of this right to grandeur of character and are false to it. Deep down, we know we're capable of more, of real inner nobility, but we settle for these superficial displays instead.
So we're faking it, essentially.
He even says powerful people like senators or presidents sometimes climb high as an apology for real worth, using their status as compensation for being of a poor, cold, hard nature, trying to fill an inner emptiness with outer status.
Wow, that's a really sharp critique of resume virtues. It's not just that we try to impress, it's that we might be doing it because we feel lacking inside. We know we're falling short of our potential and trying to paper over.
Precisely. And C.S. Lewis, he gives a really stark picture of this internal battle. He says, the natural life in each of us is something self-centered.
Natural life.
Yeah.
Meaning our default state.
Yeah, our sort of unredeemed, ego-driven state. He says it wants to be petted and admired, to take advantage of other lives, to exploit the whole universe. It's fundamentally self-serving.
Exploit the universe. That's quite a claim.
And he adds that this self-centered nature is actually afraid of the light and air of the spiritual world. Why? Because it instinctively knows that if that spiritual connection takes hold, all its self-centeredness and self-will are going to be killed.
So the ego fights back. It sees spiritual growth or genuine connection as a threat to its existence.
Exactly. It's like a deeply ingrained survival instinct for the ego. It resists anything that challenges its dominance, its desire to be in control.
Okay, this is getting really interesting. If the ego is fighting for its life, what does that mean for how we relate to other people? How does this play out in our relationships?
Marianne Williamson offers a really clear perspective on this. She argues the ego uses relationships to separate us, not connect us. She calls it the special relationship.
Special relationship. What does she mean by that?
It's a relationship rooted in what she calls a belief in internal emptiness. So, because you feel empty inside, you approach the relationship asking, what can I get? How can this person fill my needs, make me feel better, validate me?
Ah, so it's transactional.
Yeah.
Based on lack.
Right. Whereas the Holy Spirit, or you could say our higher self, asks the opposite, what can I give? The ego wants to use people to fulfill needs, which just reinforces the illusion of need in the first place.
So trying to use a relationship mainly for your own benefit is basically doomed.
Williamson says yes, it will always falter because it's built on scarcity and using others, not genuine connection or giving.
That really highlights the difference, doesn't it? Between those resume relationships, maybe networking, using people for status, and the eulogy relationships, the ones built on real character, giving and seeing the other person fully. It's consumption versus contribution. Hashtag tag 1.3, the cost of an unexamined life.
Okay, so if we just let these ego tendencies run the show, always chasing the next validation, always putting ourselves first, what's the end game? What's the real cost, according to these thinkers? Well, the picture they paint is sobering. Seneca, the Stoic philosopher, he puts it very directly. He says something like, you live as if you'll live forever. You never think about your own frailty. You don't see how much time has already gone.
Oof. Yeah, we waste it.
But you squander it like you have an endless supply. He really pushes us to think about how much time gets lost to pointless anxieties, foolish joy, greed, just societal distraction.
Groundless sorrow, foolish joy.
Yeah.
He doesn't pull punches.
No. And his famous question is just devastating. How late it is to begin really to live just when life must end. He basically calls it stupid to forget our mortality.
So chasing the external stuff, the resume list, without thinking deeply, we're missing the point. We're literally wasting our lives.
That's his argument. We're so busy with the superficial that we neglect the inner work, the stuff that actually makes life meaningful until it's potentially too late. It's about managing your life, not just your time.
That's a real wake-up call. It makes you stop and think, what does really living even look like then, if it's not just accumulating achievements?
Well, for Seneca and the Stoics, it's about living virtuously, according to reason, being resilient inside no matter what happens outside. Which connects, interestingly, to Viktor Frankl.
From his experiences in the concentration camps.
Exactly. He wrote about the immense danger of losing your inner self in those extreme conditions. He saw people who, if they didn't fight to retain his self-respect, they would just collapse inwardly.
Lose their humanity.
Yeah, he said they'd lose the feeling as an individual and drop to a level equal to that of animals. He stressed how vital it was to fight for that inner freedom and personal values, even when everything external was designed to crush them.
So in that ultimate test, the resume stuff, job, status, money, it was all gone. Completely meaningless.
Utterly stripped away. All that was left was character, that inner choice. Hold on to your dignity, your values, or let the external horror destroy you from within.
It raises such a crucial question for us, even in less extreme situations. How do we guard that inner core, that human essence, when life throws challenges at us? Or even just subtly pressures us to compromise our values for external gain? It sounds like a constant internal battle for integrity, where the eulogy virtues are the only real anchor.
Okay, so if the ego, this self-centered drive, is the core problem leading us down the path of maybe a wasted life focused on resume points, then humility seems like the obvious antidote, right? Turning away from the self.
Exactly. It's the counter movement.
But humility, it sounds so passive, maybe, especially in our culture that values being assertive and promoting yourself. What does it actually mean in practice, according to these sources? It's more than just being quiet or downplaying achievements, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. It's much deeper. And what's really striking is how different spiritual paths converge on this. You have mystics like Catherine of Siena and Jan van Rooijsbroek, centuries apart, both saying that real spiritual progress comes through knowing the self as nothing.
As nothing. That sounds harsh. Well, not in a self-hating way. More like understanding your relative place, knowing the self is finite and knowing the Godhead or ultimate reality as the all-embracing truth. It's about seeing reality clearly, not being inflated with self-importance.
So it's perspective, seeing yourself as part of a much bigger picture.
Right. Rooijsbroek put it beautifully. Knowledge of ourselves teaches us whence we come, where we are, and whither we're going. He says we come from God, we're kind of in exile here, and our deepest longing is actually a pullback towards that divine source. Humility is recognizing that larger context.
That idea of the self as nothing still feels countercultural, though. We're told to build ourselves up, find ourselves. This sounds like letting go of the self.
It's letting go of the ego's version of self, the inflated, separate self. It's a paradox. In emptying yourself of ego, you connect with something much larger and more real.
Okay, so how do you actually do that? How do you practice this inner renunciation?
Well, Paramahansa Yogananda stresses that true liberation is dependent on inner rather than outer renunciations. It's not just about giving up stuff externally.
Right, you could give away all your possessions, but still be full of pride or desire inside.
Exactly. It's an internal shift. St. John of the Cross talks about the dark night of the soul, this intense period where the soul gets purged from the affections and desires of sense. It's painful, but the result is liberty of spirit.
Liberty. Freedom from those desires.
Freedom from being controlled by them. He says the journey becomes about pure love for God, wanting only to please God. And this leads to a kind of holy fear, not terror, but deep reverence, which actually preserves and increases the virtues. You stop finding satisfaction in yourself and find it in that higher purpose instead.
So true freedom, real virtue, it comes from letting go internally, not from just trying harder with your willpower.
That seems to be the core message. And it's not just for mystics. Think about Miyamoto Musashi, the legendary swordsman, fierce competitor, master of his art.
Right, the author of the Book of Five Rings.
Yeah. Even he showed humility. There's a story where he presented his writings to a lord who followed a different school of martial arts. It was seen as a sign of humility.
In that context, that's huge. Not trying to prove his way was superior.
Exactly. Even at the pinnacle of skill in a competitive world, he chose respect over dominance. It suggests that true wisdom, true mastery, involves recognizing value in other paths, acknowledging you don't have all the answers. That's a kind of profound humility, a real eulogy virtue right there. Hashtag tag 2.2, finding purpose beyond the self. So once you start loosening the ego's grip, embracing that humility we talked about, it naturally creates space. Space for something bigger to enter, a sense of purpose that goes beyond just you.
Okay, finding a purpose. People talk about that a lot. How do these sources frame it?
John Kabat-Zinn, known for mindfulness work, he encourages asking really fundamental questions like, what is my job on the planet with a capital J?
With a capital J meaning your true calling.
Yeah, or what do I care about so much that I would pay to do it? He believes that if you keep asking these questions honestly, really sit with them, they can lead you places you'd never expect.
places you wouldn't find just by following the usual path, like career ladders or parental expectations.
Exactly, or even your own unexamined self-limiting beliefs. It's an active search for what genuinely resonates with your core, not just what looks good on the resume.
That makes sense. Actively seeking your capital J, Joe.
Eh?
This feels connected to what the Bhagavad Gita says about a place in the universe, doesn't it? That shift away from the individual self.
Absolutely. The Gita argues that our sense of being separate individuals, our bodily difference, is ultimately maya and illusion, not the final reality.
Maya illusion. So our feeling of being totally separate is mistaken.
According to the Gita, yes. It teaches that our real purpose, shared by all living beings, is to satisfy kasya, to serve the divine source. That feeling of being an independent identity, completely separate from kana, that's the illusion, the maya.
Like a wave thinking it's separate from the ocean.
That's a perfect analogy. So the path to liberation, to seeing reality clearly, involves engaging in transcendental service through kino consciousness. Basically acting in a way that serves the divine, which dissolves the illusion of separateness and reconnects you to your true purpose.
Okay, that's a powerful spiritual framework.
Yeah.
But for someone maybe not on that specific path, how does this idea of finding a purpose beyond yourself translate into everyday life? How do you find that transcendent connection in a more secular way?
Joseph Campbell offers a great bridge here. He studied myths across cultures. He says that experiencing compassion, accord, or even identity with another, or finding some ego-transcending principle like justice or truth or beauty that you feel compelled to serve, that's the start of a truly meaningful, almost religious way of life.
So it doesn't have to be a deity. It could be a core value you commit to.
Yes. He says the ultimate goal in many mystical traditions is union with the divine, where duality is transcended. But even moving towards serving something bigger than your own ego, another person, an ideal starts you on that path away from self-centeredness. It elevates your life beyond just personal concerns.
That broadens it significantly. And C.S. Lewis, he takes this idea of purpose even further, right? Applying it to humanity as a whole.
He does. He talks about morality needing to consider the general purpose of human life as a whole, what man was made for, what course the whole fleet ought to be on. It's not just about individual journeys, but our collective direction.
The whole fleet. I like that image. We're all in it together.
And Lewis also makes this really provocative point about giving. He says, one can give nothing whatever without giving oneself. That is to say, risking oneself.
Risking oneself. How so?
He argues that if you're not willing to risk anything, your comfort, your time, maybe even your reputation or safety for that purpose or that person you're serving, then you're not really giving at all. True purpose, the kind that builds character, demands vulnerability, sacrifice. It requires putting something on the line for what you believe in. It's not just a nice idea, it's embodied commitment. Hashtag 2.3, the power of connection and community.
So, moving away from the ego, finding a larger purpose. It seems like this naturally leads towards valuing others more, towards community. And our sources really seem to emphasize how vital these connections are. Not just nice, but essential.
Absolutely essential. Look at Blackout Speaks. It gives such a powerful sense of community strength in the Lakota tradition. He describes the sun dance, a ceremony meant to give the people strength.
A collective ritual.
Yes, and participants had to show endurance, even stands being teased. It wasn't just individual toughness, it was about reinforcing the bonds, the resilience of the whole group. Blackout constantly stresses the importance of the nation's unity.
He has that quote about the hoop.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. The life of the people was in the hoop. And what are many little lives if the life of those lives be gone? His own sense of duty, like trying to save the Black Hills, was completely tied to his people, their shared identity, their land. His purpose was the community.
It shows how shared identity and collective effort build a strength individuals just don't have alone. It's about the virtue of the group, not just the individual. A real contrast to the go-it-alone resume focus.
And this isn't just ancient wisdom. Caspar Terkulle talks about this very relevantly today. He sees people building meaningful lives outside traditional religion, but they still need help to ground and enrich those practices. They need community.
Because we're facing an isolation crisis.
Exactly. He says in this crisis where loneliness contributes to deaths of despair, genuine connection isn't a nice to have, it's a lifesaver. That's incredibly stark. Connection is fundamental to our survival, mentally and physically.
A lifesaver.
Yeah.
That really drives home the importance of moving beyond isolation, doesn't it? It's not just about feeling good. It's about fundamental human need.
And Adrienne Marie Brown adds another layer to this. She talks about how community is crucial for learning and growth. She says, learning in community helps us see how our own ideas are shifting over time.
Because you get exposed to different perspectives.
Right. She thinks holding rigidly to one position despite new information is actually immature. The truly radical thing is to keep evolving your ideas. And community is vital for that, giving you access to information and viewpoints you'd miss on your own.
So community isn't just for comfort or support. It's actually essential for intellectual and spiritual development. It keeps us from getting stuck in our own echo chambers.
Precisely. It's a dynamic space for growth. And linking this back to the bigger picture, it's about serving the collective good, moving beyond just personal development.
Like Dallas Willard suggests.
Exactly. He talks about truly impactful leaders, Christ-like ones in his terms. Their main job isn't necessarily political or economic revolution, but bringing understanding and truth to people's lives and the issues we face.
So focusing on wisdom and clarity for everyone.
Yes. Their service is to keep a true picture of what human well-being is and what promotes it, constantly before the public, for the collective good. They cultivate eulogy virtues not just individually, but in the shared understanding of society, guiding the fleet, you could say. Okay, so this brings us to the really practical side. How do we actually do this? How do we cultivate these eulogy virtues day to day? We see it's not just about avoiding bad stuff, but actively building good character. And many sources point towards faith and spiritual practice as key tools.
Thomas Merton's story comes to mind here. He had this huge awakening, right? Moving away from just rationalism.
Yes, he wrote about becoming intensely aware of needing a vital faith and seeing dead, selfish rationalism as unreal, unsubstantial. He felt the only way to truly live was in a world that was charged with the presence and reality of God.
Charged with presence. That's vivid.
And crucially, he realized the core of spiritual life isn't intellectual knowledge, it's love. Love as an act of the will, uniting you with your ultimate purpose. It was a total reorientation from head to heart, from thinking about God to living in God's presence.
That's a profound shift. But it begs the question, how do you actively cultivate that sense of presence, that connection to God or pure potentiality or whatever term resonates? In the middle of a busy, often secular life, how do you make it real?
Deepak Chopra offers some very accessible methods with his law of pure potentiality. He says our fundamental state is pure consciousness, this underlying field of infinite possibility and creativity.
The source within.
Right. And he suggests accessing it through simple daily practices. Silence, meditation, and non-judgment. Just consciously stepping back from the constant evaluation. He also recommends spending time in nature.
Things most people can actually do.
Exactly. He says this pure consciousness is our spiritual essence. Infinite, joyful, silent, balanced, simple. It's about intentionally tapping into that quiet core that's always there beneath the surface noise.
And St. Teresa of Avila describes people who reach a state where they're not even looking for spiritual favors anymore.
Yes, she talks about souls whose desires shift completely. They're no longer seeking consolations or favors because they have the Lord himself dwelling within them. His presence is the fulfillment.
So what does that look like externally?
She says they show a marked detachment from everything, not apathy, but freedom from craving, and a desire to be either alone in contemplation or busy doing something genuinely helpful for another soul. Their focus naturally shifts outward towards service or inward towards union.
So the goal changes. It's not about getting spiritual highs, but about becoming someone aligned with that deeper reality, which connects interestingly to Julia Cameron's work in The Artist's Way, right? Faith for creativity.
It does. She talks about recovering a sense of faith as essential for unlocking creativity and nurturing yourself. It's not strictly religious faith for everyone, but a trust in the creative process, in your own inner artist child.
Protecting that inner artist.
Yeah, creating safe environments, protecting yourself from shame, expressing yourself authentically. It implies faith can be this active, creative force, trusting the flow, trusting your potential, much like spiritual faith involves trusting a higher power or deeper reality. It requires surrender and openness. Hashtag 3.2, embracing difficulty and transformation.
Now, building this kind of character, these eulogy virtues, it's usually not easy street, is it? Often the path involves facing real difficulty, challenges, even suffering, and our sources seem to suggest these aren't just obstacles to endure, but maybe catalysts for growth.
Very much so. C.S. Lewis, again, in The Great Divorce, has this really striking idea about how our ultimate state affects our past. He suggests that reaching heaven, a state of grace, will actually work backwards and turn even that agony into a glory.
Turn agony into glory, retroactively.
Yes. And conversely, choosing damnation, a state of ultimate self-centeredness, will spread back and contaminate the pleasure of the sin. It's as if our final destination, our ultimate character choice, recontextualizes everything that came before.
That's, wow, mind-bending. It implies our choices now have the power to reshape the meaning of our past suffering or joys. It gives incredible weight to our present character development.
It really does. And Richard Rohr offers a related perspective on dealing with uncertainty. He says the only price we pay for living in the big picture, seeing life from that larger, trusting perspective, is to hold a bit of doubt and anxiety about the exact how, if, when, where, and who.
So we can trust that the ultimate purpose or reality, but we have to accept not knowing all the details.
Exactly. We have to embrace the unknown, tolerate the discomfort of not having all the answers or being in control. That acceptance, that trust despite uncertainty is part of the journey and requires leaning into difficulty.
And this connects to a really radical idea. The notion that we can actually consciously choose to change our own programming, even our biological or cultural conditioning. I was struck by Richard Dawkins saying this.
Yeah, it's quite something coming from the author of The Selfish Gene. He ends the book with this passionate defense of human freedom, stating clearly, we have the power to defy the selfish genes of our birth and, if necessary, the selfish memes of our indoctrination.
We can defy our genes and upbringing.
He believes so. He even says we can deliberately cultivate and nurturing pure, disinterested altruism, something that has no place in nature. It's a powerful affirmation of human agency, our unique ability to rise above our instincts and conditioning for higher ideals. Character becomes a conscious choice against the grain.
That's incredibly hopeful. It means we're not just puppets of our biology or culture.
Right. And Hermann Hesse's Siddhartha gives us a story of this kind of radical transformation. Siddhartha realizes his early spiritual path, being a knowledgeable Brahmin, actually held him back. Too much pride, too much intellect.
He was always the smartest.
Exactly. And he concluded he had to plunge into the worldly life, lust and power, woman and money, until that old self, the spiritual achiever, was basically dead.
A kind of ego death through experience.
It seems so. Only after hitting bottom, after shedding that old identity built on resume virtues like knowledge and piety, could a new Siddhartha emerge, genuinely full of joy. It's a dramatic picture of needing to deconstruct the false self to build an authentic one.
It sounds like a brutal but necessary process sometimes, shedding the skin.
It can be, and it often requires structure. Yogananda mentions the ancient rigid rules governing how yoga was traditionally taught, guru to disciple. It underscores that deep transformation isn't usually a casual thing. It often needs discipline, guidance, stages of practice. It's serious work. Hashtag 3.3 conscious. Conscious choices for goodness. So finally, building these eulogy virtues, it's not just about these big transformations or spiritual practices. It really comes down to the small conscious choices we make every single day, how we interact with people, how we respond to situations. It's a continuous, moment-by-moment practice.
C.S. Lewis offers that really practical but difficult advice for relationships. Hate a bad man's actions, but not hate the bad man. Or hate the sin, but not the sinner.
That requires incredible inner discipline, doesn't it? To separate the act, which might be terrible, from the person's inherent worth or potential for change.
Yeah, it's so easy to just condemn the whole person. Resisting that requires real character, real compassion. How do you build that kind of strength?
Marcus Aurelius, the Stoic emperor, offers similar advice. He taught that true meekness is invincible, but only when it's genuine, not fake. He advised persisting in kindness even towards people trying to harm you.
Persist in kindness even then. How?
He suggested gently correcting them, without scorn or reproach, with genuine goodwill, maybe even reminding them you cannot hurt me, you hurt yourself. But crucially, do it privately, not to show off your philosophy, but for their sake alone.
That's not weakness at all. It's immense inner strength, an unwavering core that external attacks can't shake. Strength and softness.
Exactly. And speaking of inner work, the practice of confession, often seen just religiously, seems relevant here too for building character.
How so? Beyond just forgiveness.
Dietrich Bonhoeffer saw it as a powerful tool against self-deception and self-indulgence. He described it as mortifying the pride of the flesh, deliberately delivering your ego up to shame and death through Christ.
Mortifying pride. Facing your flaws head on.
Yes. And through absolution, through that acceptance and forgiveness, you rise as new men, utterly dependent on the mercy of God. It highlights how vulnerability, radical honesty about our failings, is actually foundational for humility and real growth. It's about shedding the ego's need to appear perfect.
So confronting our messiness, paradoxically, makes us stronger in character. And this all seems to lead towards inner peace, right? Towards self-acceptance.
It really does. Don Miguel Ruiz, in The Fifth Agreement, links impeccable speech directly to inner peace. He says if you're impeccable with your word, you stop judging yourself. You don't carry guilt or shame.
Because you're living in truth.
Exactly. The result, he says, is feeling wonderful, smiling genuinely, accepting yourself just the way you are, moment by moment. Conscious, ethical choices lead directly to profound self-acceptance. Your inner world aligns with your outer actions. No resume virtue can buy that.
That deep inner harmony, living authentically.
And maybe the simplest wisdom comes from the Tao of Pooh. It just suggests avoiding the tense mind, the one that thinks too much and tries too hard.
Like Pooh himself.
Kind of. The animals in the forest don't think too much. They just are. It points to the state of naturalness, of grace that comes when you let go of the ego's frantic striving and controlling. When you stop overthinking and just be present, aligned, acting ethically, character emerges naturally. Effortless being, not effortful doing. That's where the eulogy virtues really bloom. Hashtag outro. So wrapping up this deep dive, we've really traced a path, haven't we? From understanding the ego's pull, that allure of external validation, the whole resume virtue game, all the way to finding the deep strength and peace that comes from humility, from purpose beyond the self, from real community.
Yeah, it feels like we've seen this convergence from ancient philosophy to modern psychology, all pointing towards the idea that real character, those eulogy virtues, isn't built under the bright lights of achievement.
Right. It's built more in the quiet commitment, the consistent effort towards something bigger than just me, often through facing challenges, changing from the inside out, and just making good choices every day.
It seems the core shift is moving from what can I get from life, from others, to really asking what can I give. Moving from being obsessed with our separate I to understanding our place in a larger we.
A fundamental reorientation away from the self-serving ego towards, well, towards service, towards connection, towards what truly lasts.
Which leaves us, and you listening, with a really important question to sit with, I think. If we're serious about cultivating character, about living for the eulogy and not just the resume, what resume virtues might you need to consciously question or maybe even let go of?
Yeah, even the ones society screams are essential for success. What external achievement are you most proud of that maybe, just maybe, is obscuring some deeper inner work that's waiting?
What impressive item on your list might you need to loosen your grip on, to gain something truly invaluable for your soul? Something that resonates not in public applause, but in the quiet, lasting respect and love of those who truly know you. Something to think about.